Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this plenary session that will be, and we will give the voice to industry this time. You have heard a lot about European Space Agency. So now it's time for industry to give their view. And today we have selected one topic, which are the small satellite revolution coming into the Earth observation domain. To open the session, I will leave the floor to my boss, Simonetta Kelly, the head of Earth Observation Program.
Thank you, Dominique. Good morning to everybody. As Dominique said, this is a session today dedicated to small satellite constellation. Every day this week at LPS, we try to cover a topic. Today is the Industry Day. So really, Dominique in the lead for that one. I think we have organized this session to listen to industry, to listen to where we stand in the context of Earth observation and also the small satellites. I think the world is evolving, is changing, and of course it's changing a lot in terms of what's happening in the industry side in Earth observation. And we've seen processes of miniaturisation, we've seen processes where there's been a shift of paradigm in terms of what satellites we're building. We used to build the big MVSATs a few decades ago. Now we're going really towards development of small satellite constellation. And there, again, I think we had also an element of disruption of the traditional models. We've seen that in the domain of geostationary telecommunication, and this is also propelling now into the sector of Earth observation. This was also accelerated somehow by everything that's happening in terms of reduction of launch cost, with more opportunities for small satellites to be launched, for constellations to be launched, and also I think an increasingly vibrant competitive environment, but also an increasingly vibrant environment where we see the private sector really stepping in. And so a lot of new startups, a lot of new SMEs, and also medium-sized companies stepping in. It's also a revolution in terms of data. It's also a revolution in terms of how data are collected and how data are actually processed and delivered. And that's why ESA is really, in a position here to not just support you in terms of evolution and further next steps of the context of the satellite constellation, but really to try and also continuously support your competitiveness in this domain, which is a relevant one, and I think one where Europe still has clear competitiveness, advancement, and role. So today we are here with this session. It will be led by Dominique. Two parts, the upstream part in the first session with some key, really high-level representative from industry, and then the second part with the value-added sector, also very, very relevant in the context of constellation. And with that, I'd like to pass the floor to Dominique and listen to you for the next steps. Thanks.
Thank you, Simonetta. So we have 5 panelists for the upstream, so representative from the satellite hardware part, which is the things I love the much. So that's why we start with this. From these 5 panelists, we will have different point of view on the upstream sector. So I will start with Charles from Eurospace. We all know Eurospace, and we know that you have an excellent overview of the industrial capacity. We also are very well aware of the revolution on the LEO telecom market and constellation, and now it's an established market. From your perspective of Eurospace, how do you see the evolution and the growth of Earth observation constellation?
Thank you very much, Dominique. So I would say that Earth observation is on a different trajectory, but still an evolving one. So we are seeing strong growth in institutional demand, which is notably driven by Starshield in the US and Jilin in China, with a bit more than 100 units per each constellation. And USA and China are being the undisputed leader in this segment. And by the way, this market is mostly captive and non-accessible to European players. In Europe, production goes from less than 10 units to about 30 so far. And, but still, European Earth observation constellation approaches are emerging with players like Loft Orbital, ISI, Airbus, and others which are demonstrating both commercial potential and innovation, and not just for science uses, but also other emerging domains from meteorology to the security and defense domains. So will LEO Earth observation constellation be the standard in the future? My answer is quite simple. It will really depend on the use cases and the funding which is available. So real-time Earth observation has real clear use cases, such as defense or crisis response, but it requires high frequency rates, so daily, hourly rates, usually provided by numerous low-cost satellites with low resolution. But building those high revisit constellations and sustaining a real-time monitoring constellation has a non-negligible cost. But we see with the emergence of and the rise of defense budget and the need for tactical information that it may fuel this demand. And for other use cases where real-time Earth observation is not necessarily a necessity, but where the high resolution is, for example, for scientific needs, bigger satellites, I think, will continue to find their relevance.
Not a solution for everything. Yes, I'm back on live, but nevertheless a niche which is growing. Let's move to Florian from Open Cosmos. So Open Cosmos was one of the new space, but now it's a well-established company. You have been very successful in proposing affordable but performant Earth observation small satellite. Could you share your approach and what makes your success, Florian?
Yes, and thank you first for the compliment. Also, we 10 years this year, so I think officially we're not a startup anymore.
Yeah,
which is one thing. So indeed, there are two things as part of it. So first, we've benefited from a very favorable context, such like others as well. The first one was the minimum cost for attaining something valuable has decreased. So meaning that now you can do something which is of value, but with lesser budget, which has been one of the blockers for a lot of the nations on the planet. And now it can be seen the number of space agencies are increasing, but also the constellation can be done for example, less than 100 or even 30 million euros. The first part. The second part has been the growing national interest coupled with, in Europe, for example, the recovery fund, which has effectively led to the emergence of many national initiatives. After this context has been the same for many, we think that at Open Cosmos, what has made us different were three things. So first, the reactivity, the commitment, and finally, we are a bit bold. So reactivity, we move fast. That's what we think makes us different. We are able to adapt easily to a very dynamic context, which is when you have increasing constraints on resources, geopolitical, really makes a difference when you have to make fast decisions at company level. The second one, commitment, is we're not scared of going to another country like we did in Greece, set up an office. So it was only like, I think, 15 months ago, we set up an office in Greece. 1 year later, we are on the way to deliver 7 satellites to be launched next year. We have more than 25 engineers now working there and growing. And we really want to make things happen on the ground. So with effectively the applications that this will go. And finally, bold. So there is a lot of challenges for all of these, let's say, constellations that we have to deliver. And we're not afraid of it. We really embrace it. And in a way, that's where we think we can make a change. We accept a higher risk, but we also put the effort behind it.
Thank you. Agility, sizing the opportunity, that's one of the key elements. Another bold move was OHB Sweden with Arctic Weather Satellite. So welcome, Benoit. So you have launched successfully Arctic Weather Satellite. The performance in orbit are amazing at the level of operational system. However, the cost of this mission was very low. The delay, it was only 3 years duration to achieve that. So how you make that possible in OHB Sweden? Can you share with us your recipe?
Thank you, Dominique, and thank you for being here. So first, I think Arctic Weather is a common success.
Yes.
So yes, how did we manage this? I think you need 5 elements which are consistent with each other. So a team, a product, partners, customer, and the approach. So if I go through the different points, the team, I think the mindset at OHB Sweden is we have a very dedicated team, and we take our challenges very seriously, and for us it's always very important to deliver on time. So from the beginning, we took really the challenge, and we knew what was at stake. So the product, I mean, we were not starting from scratch. We had already a baseline with our InnoSat platform because Arctic-Weather is actually the third one. And also on the payload side, there was also a certain maturity, and we had a historical relationship to Omnisys, so we delivered the payload. So I think this helped. Then the partners. So from the beginning, we knew that we could only be successful also if all our industrial partners would work with us, and had also very regular checkpoint with the CEOs of the critical suppliers to really align about what was at stake, what needed to be done, and we took also we were able to take quick decisions to escalate topics, and I think this has been also very important. I mean, it has not been a walk in the park to achieve this in 3 years, so we had some crisis situation, but I think what is important is we were able to manage it all together. Then a customer. I think we had a very good team on the ESA side. There also we had a regular checkpoint to align to make sure that if some issues were pointing out, we were addressing them before it became a real issue, and there was really a willingness on ESA side to take quick decisions. And I think without the team you had, it wouldn't have been a success. And then the approach, yes, the overall approach has been being pragmatic. Really, there was a high management attention. I mean, in the company, as I said, I was personally involved, all my staff, and really believing in it and making it happen. So I think that's the recipe that we want to apply. And I mean, 3 years on Arctic-Weather, we have delivered other satellites actually since then in less than 20 months. So also with new developments. So yeah.
Thank you, Benoit. So industrialization and being ready on top of the alignment of all stakeholders on the objectives, that's a key element. So about industrialization, just next to you, we have Miguel Angel from Airbus. And we know that Airbus has been already successful in delivering quite a constellation, OneWeb, with hundreds of satellites. It was for telecom application. And you are now engaged in the next generation of OneWeb with Eutelsat. But you have also derived from this experience a product for Earth observation. From your experience, which is quite a large-scale production and manufacturing, could you explain what is common and what differs from telecom to EO for this kind of platform?
Thanks, Dominique. Well, I think that the commonality pretty much depends on the mission performance you want to achieve. We've made the experience of slightly adapting the OneWeb platform for loft orbital, which possibilitates making use of the full production capabilities of the platform without almost any change. It's very minor. But when you come to missions with very high agility, increased pointing performance, and so on, as we've made for CO3D, the changes are much more fundamental. So the first thing is that you need to size your mission within the power, energy, delta V budgets, so you can take benefit of most of the core avionics of the platform, and that is already a very good starting point. But then there are some fundamental changes you need to implement. First, the overall accommodation and layout of the platform to enable agility, to accommodate the payload you want to launch with, and to enable the multiple launch capability. Second, of course, the AOCS. That needs to be adapted in terms of hardware and software so that you can achieve the pointing performance, pointing stability, and agility domain you are targeting. And finally, you typically need to adapt your payload data chain, which is something which is not existing in the telecoms platform. So first, storage capacity, then onboard processing, as it's been the case for CO3D, and finally your payload transmission chain, so the subsystem. So those would be, I would say, the 3 main elements you need to act on accommodation, AOCS, payload data handling.
Okay, I think it's, and you are mentioning also accommodation to towards the launch solution. That's a key element for the constellation. So you were mentioning Loft Orbital, perfect transition with ELISA. You have developed quite an interesting offer in order to reduce the time to orbit. Could you explain a bit the approach of Loft Orbital?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm very pleased to share this panel with you all. So basically, Loft Orbital is providing a service. So we fly our customers' payload as a service. The only thing they have to care about is their payload and their mission. So that sounds very different from the traditional way of doing space. Because in the traditional way of doing space, you have the payload that is selected at the very beginning, and then you design a spacecraft around that payload. So we have adopted a complete different approach, and we rely on standardized platforms. We buy them off the shelf. This enables us to buy them in batches. So if you go to our website, you will see the satellites that are really off the shelf in inventory. We bought more than 30 of them to Airbus, based on our platform, on which we've made some modifications, notably on the AOCS and on the batteries, in order to have longer mission duration. Our very first customer for this satellite is Earth Daily, for which we've flown the very first satellite 3 days ago. We're super excited about this, and we're flying an entire constellation for them. So what I would say is very different from the approach of Loft compared to the classic traditional approach is really speed and reliability. The speed is because, as I told you, the platforms are there already. They're completely out of the critical path. So what we tell our customers is that the only thing that drives the schedule is the payload. As soon as we get the payload flight model, 6 months after the satellite is flown. So this is really like the very first value proposition, I would say. The second one is reliability, because we're using a bus that has already flown in the past, so more than 600 buses for our platform. We are completely like reducing all of the risks, technological, programmatic, and financial. So I would say this is made really possible thanks to two main technologies, on the ground and in orbit. On the ground, it's called Cockpit, and it's a mission control software and also a satellite control software. So we use it for the satellite operations. We are the satellite operator, and our customers are the mission operators. So our customers, they operate their mission as if the satellite was theirs, and we focus on making sure they have, if I summarize and caricature a bit, they have water and electricity, and they take care of the rest.
You are almost killing my business by making space so easy. Okay, back to Charles to talk about the market in Europe. There are lots of comments on the European market. There was a Draghi report complaining about the fragmentation of this market, both in terms of demand and offer. Sometimes they are complaining about the geo-return mechanism as a way to fragment the offer. So some are stating that the state of this market is really an issue for the emergence of European champion. So first, with your transverse view, do you share this statement that our market is very fragmented? And what should Europe do to improve the situation?
Well, yes, I share the view that fragmentation in the European space market is a real challenge and also a risk to the industry competitiveness. So on the demand side, we see a multiple of customer, institutional customer, ESA, the EU, national agencies that are often working in silos. This leads to scattered small-scale procurements that don't create the scale or continuity that the industry needs. On the supply chain, so Europe has many capable players, but they are fragmented around countries, across countries and programs, and making it harder to build globally competitive champions. So this fragmentation limits economies of scale, slows down contracting, and reduces the ability for industry to invest and innovate. And it also increases dependence on non-European players, putting at the end our strategic autonomy at risk. So what Europe should do, I think first we need to aggregate the demand between across ESA, EU, and member states to create large, long-term, strategically aligned programs. We also need to streamline procurement, reduce time to contract, cut proposal burdens, and delegate more execution to industry. Third, we should also enable scalability by supporting full system deployment, not just individual missions, but including integration services and also the downstream exploitation. And finally, we should better link research and development to the market. So innovation actually reaches maturity and potential customers. So I think what's necessary, and we have been pleading for that for a long time, is a true European industrial strategy in Europe that will ensure that the public authorities have unrestricted access to the space capabilities they need in order for them to implement the public policy for which they are bound to, and with the required level of independence.
So yes, it sounds very easy when you say it. I think we still have some work to do as a space agency, and of course with the Commission, who has a huge role in Europe by potentially federating the demand. On the industrial perspective, so back to Florian, you have mentioned several initiatives in Europe. What do you think is missing to capitalize more on these initiatives?
Yeah, indeed. And so I supplement a lot of the propositions that Charles has made. On our side, so let's say initially small satellites specifically were an object of curiosity. It became interest. Now there is some trust.
Yeah.
We have to deliver. Not only for ourselves, of course, but because politically a lot of money has been invested through different channels. They want to see results. Otherwise, there won't be something after that for the non-space motivates them to continue putting money into this. So we really need to, that's the first step we all have to do. Part of it is what was mentioned, is there needs to be more coordination across the different initiatives that have existed and emerged. Initially not coordinated, but I think there is still complete possibility to have the data, for example, increasing the revisit for each of the initial initiatives by mutualizing, which is in a way a model we've proposed through Open Constellation, but that can be applied very easily through at European level. So that's really the key part. I would disagree on the fact that fragmentation, let's say, hampers innovation, because I think that we've never seen that many ideas. I'm not saying they're all good, but which are emerging. Now might be the time to start testing them, keeping the ones that work, and really put a strategy along the ones which have worked. We're passing the testing phase, now we really need to increase on this part. The second one is more global, is we really need to start having sustainable space for sustainable Earth. Sustainable Earth, that's also why we are here, because we believe we can solve the solutions. We also need to pay attention that on our side, having a lot of satellites in space has a cost in terms of kilogram resources, but also carbon dioxide footprint. And therefore, there might be an effort we need to look at to say, okay, is it really needed to have that many satellites to have everything we want to do? When do we need to stop? Where is the real value? And I don't have the answer, but that's why I'm struggling at the moment to see, okay, what's the right balance between growing, but growing efficiently, not only for space, but for the planet.
That's a good point. One of the other challenge, Benoit, is the industrial challenge. So if we go to much higher revisit, that means much more satellite. We have the example of Arctic Weather Satellite and EP-Sterna, which will be a constellation, but we are talking about few satellites per year. What will it take from your perspective to move from few satellites a year to few satellites a month?
Thank you. Very good question, because it's really a topic for us at the moment. First, I would say, I mean, it's a bit new for the space industry, but it's not new in many other industries. So I think we can also benefit from the experience of other industries. So the first point, I think, is the mindset that we need to have in the company. So we have a lot of heritage, 30 years of heritage with small sat. So we know how to build satellites, but we need to change our approach. So first we need to put this as a key topic for the company. So we have created a position reporting directly to me, which is someone taking care of industrialization in our company, who himself has a background of ramping up production in another industry. We need to hire competencies from other industries. So we just hired someone from Toyota, Volvo, and there's also other industries which are not high volume, but which are also more industrialized than we are. So it's a mindset, the right attention, and the company level in the management. And then the approach is completely different. I mean, industrializing means taking different choices in terms of design, in terms of how you approach AIT. So you need to have appropriate facilities, and we just moved 7 weeks ago in a much bigger facility. We were with triple size of our clean room. We have now also test facilities directly linked to the clean room, so that we can have also real production flow. So that's one prerequisite, but also how we want to do the AIT. So we are really now analyzing the different steps and see how we can shorten the throughput time of different steps, so that we can increase the production rate without having to duplicate or maximize the surface. I mean, that's the key challenge. It's about tools, and it's about also how to approach the supply chain, because you are very dependent, of course, on the performance of your suppliers. You are not isolated if you want to deliver on time and to have this series production. So we need to also enable our suppliers and also have a different way of selecting them and qualifying them. So we want also to avoid to discover issues at the incoming inspections. You need to have already a qualified process. I mean, there's other industries doing this. I mean, I've worked in the automotive before, in aeronautics. I mean, we know how it can work. So I think we just need to learn from this and to adapt it to our industry. And yes, tools. I mean, everything I think needs to be combined with this goal of being quicker, more efficient, so that we can deliver more satellites. And for us, it's not only the satellites. EPH Ternites will be the first batch. Will be 6 satellites in 6 months, I think. So it's not high production rate. I think Airbus will smile about this, but it's a step. And we have a similar evolution on the propulsion. We have now supporting a company on the geostationary satellite where we will deliver electrical propulsion subsystem. I mean, with a cadency of 1 every second month. So it's a small step, and we are learning. And our aim is to be able to support the needs of our customers. And if it is about delivering several satellite or propulsion module per month, we'll do it.
I share that it is a transformation, and I like very much the point that we do not have to reinvent the wheel, because solution exists. It just in adjacent industry, and we have to cherry pick what is working and to adapt. So exactly, let's move to Airbus with this OneWeb experience. If I ask you to build me a 300 satellite constellation of Earth observation, so optic and radar satellite, what will be, from your experience of OneWeb, your key challenges and how you will meet them?
So as I said before, we made the experience of developing CO3T from the OneWeb platform. We are now developing SAR systems based on exactly the same platform. The topic here is that the adaptations we've made to the platform and the payloads themselves have not been conceived from the start for a mass production. So they are conceived for some tens of satellites, some units. So for me, if we need to develop a 300 satellite constellation to be delivered in a matter of 1 or 2 years, we really need to scale up production. So there are 3 elements I think we need to act on. The first one is the supply chain. Second one, the production. And I would not even call it AIT, production. And the third one, the sweet spot in terms of performance. For the supply chain, we need to rethink the design of those units where we need to increase production rates. So apply design to manufacturing processes and make sure from the start that we select and qualify appropriate codes, components that we agree with our customer on the PA requirements we need to apply to the missions. Second, production. We need to ease the AIT processes through the complete chain, from the suppliers to the system, to remove handcrafted steps, to focus on the qualification of production processes, so that we rely more on the processes themselves and less on the testing and acceptance. So workmanship is verified or guaranteed by the process. And finally, I would say the sweet spot in terms of performance. It might be that for some optical instrument, for example, the assembly processes, the alignments, are not compatible with a serial production. So we need to find the right spot where we think this is the breaking point below which, in terms of performance, we can reach serial production and see how we can compensate for that. So can we, through aggregation of data, compensate for that? Can we do post-processing? So I think those would be the three areas where we need to focus our attention for this change in the paradigm, going from the handcrafted to the industrialized space.
So not just tweaking the IIT, but rethinking completely the design of the product with the manufacturing in mind. Last question for Elisa from Loft Orbital. You have a model which is quite different from the traditional procurement model of the space agency. What are the main challenges to have this model adopted by us, space agencies, from your perspective?
Yes, thank you for that question. So the very first thing I wanted to say was that we're here to support the space agencies. We're here to support our national space agencies, ESA and CNES notably, and all of the member states agencies. This is really our goal. Our goal is not to be supported, but to support, because we have a solution that is here, it's ready, we're using it at scale. We have shown that we can do this at constellation level for operational missions and not just for demonstration missions. So this is really like the very first thing that I think is important, is that we're here to support, and we're very much willing on the next programs. That being said, on the procurement aspect that you asked on, well, I would say that the speed and flexibility that we offer is not necessarily like something that the agencies are used to. So it is true that what we feel like there is something that can be exploited is really on the speed. Like, as I told you, within 1 year, we can fly an entire mission. Like, we had a customer, we signed the contract 9 months after the payload was in space. So it's incredibly fast, and we want to make this fast access available to the agencies. The second thing we want to make available to the agencies is the flexibility. We've been very used to the classical way also of segmenting. So an application for Earth application, for Earth observation, one for navigation, one for telecom. On our satellites, we can fly different types of payloads. We can have an Earth observation payload together with patch antennas for IoT or for telecom. So that's really also the beauty of that interfacing technologies that we've built, is that we're completely agnostic in terms of payloads. Until like the payload is like 80 kilograms, I would say, we can fly any types of payloads. We can have one single big payload, different types of payloads. If you see on our latest LinkedIn post, we can host even like 16 cameras on one single satellite. So it's really to give you an idea of that, yes, we can offer this speed and flexibility. We feel like this can be done through programs that are not just like EO or telecom or navigation, but that are more generic. We see that there is a path here. We've done it with NASA. We've done it with the Canadian Space Agency. We want to do this here in Europe.
Okay, some challenges for us, Aziza. Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. So thank you for the upstream, the satellite specialist and the solution specialist also as well. And now I will invite application specialist or more the view from the downstream. So if you can join me. Thank you. No. Pick your seat. Pierre-Alain. Close to me, Pierre-Alain. So yes, we are not just doing constellation because we love building satellite, even if it is a bit my part, but because it means providing quite new solutions and new services for the customer. So that's why here we have 5 representatives from the downstream industry with this applications mindset. So I will start with Pierre-Alain from ADS Digital Solutions. You are a pioneer in this domain. So the company, Pierre-Alain, you are also a pioneer, indeed, and one of the leaders in Earth observation services. From your perspective, this appearance of this EO small satellite constellation, what is the value brought to your customer? And do you believe that this segment will grow?
Thank you, Dominique. So first we call space digital.
Yes, you're right.
And you're right. So we started with Spotimage 40 years ago, and myself, you're right, also 30 years ago, dealing with satellite imagery. Coming to just all too small satellites, constellation, this is in fact a technical, a business solution to answer specific needs, which for me are systematic coverage and revisit. It is one way to answer that. Yeah. Let's be frank, so we have seen it. A lot of companies and venture capital are investing in that. So it means that smart people are thinking there is something to do. It's true. We have 2 companies, I will name them, Planet and ISI, who invest a lot, and who, in fact, we see that their turnover is growing. So it's, and we have also some customers from us who are telling us that yes, it has an interest. So definitely, I think that 2 small satellite constellations are bringing value to our customers because they buy that. But it has to be noticed that the same customers, they are still buying us a lot of data too. So for me, there is a high complementarity between the systematic and revisit coverage that that those companies are bringing, and what we as more large satellite and more better resolution and perhaps not better quality but different quality. I think there is a real complementary. Second, the growth of the segment. So it is true that, well, I noticed that some of these players are building now bigger satellites. So it means that the small satellite, they are going to bigger satellites. So that is funny. Well, it's a fact. Second, revisit can be reached by a lot of small satellite, but it could be reached also by bigger satellites, which are perhaps more agile. So it depends the revisit you want. So that has to be taken into account. And this is definitely what the new satellites that we are launching, the 25th of July, named CO3D, they are very agile. A third is the sustainability of the business. At the beginning, it seems less costly, but the fact is you have to launch regularly the satellites, and then perhaps it's less costly, I don't know, but then you are really relying on the launchers. So it will be a good thing when we will have Maya or new launcher satellites, but today we have Falcon 9, so let's be frank on that. So I'm perhaps negative, but I want to say some positive things. Resilience. We in Airbus in December 22, we lost, due to the failure of one launcher, we lost 50% of our capability. If for small constellation satellite you fail one launcher, you will lose perhaps 1% of your capability. So that is resilience of the capability is something important for the small constellation. And but for me, what is the most important, and here it is for small constellation, but also for us, is artificial intelligence and the computing capability, which indeed they will bring really a new value to all those data, and that will help the small constellation and the larger satellite to provide the services. And for me, it is the big change we will see, the use of all those data that today are not used. So I hope I answer your question.
Yes, you open many topics, and we will come back on some of those topics. But I like the one thing you say, it's not one solution that will solve everything. There is complementarity of these solutions, and at the end of the day is what about the data, how you use all these data that will be generated. So good transition to Milena from EGEOS. You have a major role in the national constellation of Italy, IRIDE. You are in charge of developing some major part of the ground segment. It's of course the opportunity to develop new services that are not accessible with the current open data. So could you share with us some of the examples that you found striking?
Thank you, Dominic, and thanks for the opportunity for being here. I'm surrounded by former colleagues, so super happy. Yes, IRIDE, in fact, we say it's not just a constellation for Italy, for us. It's a way, it's a catalyst to develop new generation of Earth observation services, innovative solution. And we can mention marketplace, ground motion monitoring, security, all. No, it's about defense now also. It's becoming more and more important for each country and each industry. But maybe to make a real example what we do with IRIDE and what is the change compared to the traditional services and the open data you mentioned. So if we refer to a platform we develop thanks to also the help, because this is maybe also the key, the user-centric needs. It's not anymore what the industry thinks the customer needs. It's, okay, you customer, what do you need actually? And we co-design together. So this is what we did with Cyber Italy. It's a platform that is related to the hydro meteoclimate digital twin. So it's a simulation of what can happen in extreme weather condition. So it's using an hydraulic modeling impact tool, a simulation tool, and also some scenario that can be guided manually, set up by the different employee of the company. So we can really simulate what can happen. In Italy, unfortunately, above all in the region of Emilia-Romagna, in the north, there are usually flood events, very severe one. So we take this with the civil protection authorities as an example, as a pilot to develop and to see what we can do, not only on what happened and what is after, but what is the prediction, because this is now the idea about the digital twin model. So what we did was to have a simulation of what can happen in some areas on the flood inundation, and also what could be the impact on the building and agriculture. So in terms of economic damage, building categorization, so we know if it's an industrial building or it's a building where people are living in. So then it's also, you can capture what can be a potential impact on people. So this is giving a lot of information to the civil protection to, let's say, really have I would say it's an impact that is very, very practical, because in this situation happened to all of us to listen to the news and to also, I was questioning myself, say, how they organize themselves, what is the priority. So this is what we are already doing with the emergency team in EGEOS, but with this prediction will be really to say, okay, there will be some areas that in the past show this kind of behavior, so maybe the civil protection can start from that. Because when we talk with the user, it's really like we are saving resources in terms of how many people we need to use in this emergency, and we save lives at the end of the day, because we can really say, okay, don't go to this building, it's damaged, don't go to this area, it's completely destroyed. And I think this is really, it's all now about IRIDE, and it's clear, it's super important, but I think it's very important to underline the impact on the social impact we can have, and so on the security and the safety of the people.
Yes, I think that's the big trend, bringing closer space data to the crisis management team. And we have another good example with Martin and with the wildfire. So Oratech has developed quite a unique solutions for providing wildfire management, and you are relying on many open data, but you have also decided to develop your own small constellation, probably to complement. Could you tell us about why you take the decision to go with your own solution on top of what was available already?
Yeah, thank you. A pleasure to be here. And so, as a company, we are very much service oriented, and we started with the product first, and backward integrated to the satellite all the way. And what we saw when we pushed our product on the market in 2019 was there were a lot of barriers of access for data. There were a lot of people that were wanting to use the data but didn't have a clue how to use it. So we were very much focusing on the product, taking all the data that was available to us. So if there's any thermal satellite out there we can get our hands on, we'd literally do that, which is logical if you want to improve the service for your customer. Now, what we've also seen is that with all the data that is available to us, there's still gaps. There's still gaps in coverage. And as you said, to complement that, for us, it was the right choice to develop our own instrument, our own satellites, to fill the data gaps. So interesting thing is the customer themselves, they don't care about it. They don't care about any part of it. They care about the result, wherever it comes from. And we also don't show them any part of what satellite is doing the detection. We cluster the aggregation of the fire information over space and time. And it can be as easy as just a WhatsApp with a notification that there is something going on. So to lower that barrier of access. And on the other hand, they care very much about latency. And not latency in a sense that you have to process fast, but also latency in a sense that you have to provide the coverage. So with our small set, we can fill in data gaps where we currently don't have anything from LEO. The benefit from us is if we combine both, we can combine both worlds. So we can combine what I consider as the gold standard of ESA and NASA in doing fire monitoring once a day or twice a day, and can complement with our very niche way of doing things. Yeah. So we built the satellite for a couple of purposes and a couple of purposes only, so we can build them very small and we can build them at scale.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent example of what Pierre-Alain was mentioning as how we make it complementary with what exists and coming from the user expectation and not the techno-push traditional way. Sometimes we are as engineers pushed to do. Let's move to Asai. Airbus mentioned you at the same level than Planet. So that's a kind of recognition by itself, I believe. So you are very well known about your success in building one of the largest SAR satellite constellation. But you are also developing several services for extreme events management and especially flood monitoring. I've seen quite impressive solutions here. What bring you towards this kind of services, and what your asset in space is bringing to the final users finally?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. We appreciate it. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but the upstream people were very well dressed. And you look at this group, it looks like we're about to head to the pub very, very shortly at 11 a.m. Yeah, I'm learning fast. I think for us right now, data is obviously critical.
Yeah.
And having different beam modes, being able to have very high revisit time, being able to get to NRT delivery, all very, very important things. But answering questions, putting information, critical information to key decision makers, particularly in emergency situations where they can optimize resources, is critical. So for us as well, flood solutions are very, very key, but also other natural catastrophe perils. So wildfires, hurricanes, these are all areas that we can provide solutions for customers on a continual basis during a crisis and help direct them and make it accessible as well. That's really, really key. But there's other areas and other more inventive things we can do. So like with utilities, for example, we can look at offshore wind farms and from space, look at those offshore wind farms and see how well the windmills are performing and actually help monitor the situation. But while we're monitoring, what's really interesting is we can look for other things too. So if a Russian trawler wants to go steaming through a wind farm, dragging its anchor, we can see this. And we can provide verifiable evidence. And this is real science. This isn't what somebody refers to as fake news. Okay? It's real. And we can help make sure that the right responses are done in the right way because of the accuracy of the information that we provide. So that, for us, is part of a critical mission for ISI, to make sure that everything we do is to the highest standard, and we provide all of these services for customers in a way that has a good license, that allows them to disseminate information. And I guess to Milena's point, it's critical to save lives and to save people's livelihoods and property. So that's all part and parcel of what we can provide with the constellation.
And to trust the information, that's a critical dimension for crisis management. That's quite obvious, and as you mentioned, is much beyond just flood management. What you can provide with this. I move to another completely different case, further away from crisis management with Hervé. So you are part of Airborne, a startup developing a new services to certify carbon emission. There are also some satellites doing greenhouse gas monitoring, lots of them to help modeling. What is the need for a startup like you to look at technical solutions with a small satellite? Why developing your own technical solution with the data available today?
Thank you very much, Dominique. Thank you very much for inviting us. We are I'm very honored. So indeed, Carbon, we are a very young startup, less than 1 year. We are a top team of 10 people. And what we are doing is providing, let's say, measurement of CO2 emissions of industry, as you mentioned. And we are doing that from space with measurement at scale, at the scale of the plant. And we know that's really complex. Indeed, we want to break the wall of CO2 measurement and to deliver those validated, certified data. And we do that because we want to measure to reduce emissions. We want to deliver data to those who can act, and particularly to institutions for the implementation of climate-based regulation, to finance, to select their assets, to industry, to select their suppliers. So really for those who can act and reduce emissions. So indeed, today we use existing satellites. We focus on steel plants to start with. And we have done a very interesting trial making use of all accessible CO2 measurement satellites. So we did that with Prisma, with Nmap, with EMIT, with GIGSat, with Planet. So, and take this opportunity to thank all these partners for their support. And so really making use of all these, let's say, very important satellites. And we intend to use CO2M afterwards. So we managed to have first products. However, that remains indeed still limited. And so why a satellite? That's a very good question that venture capitalists are asking us. First, volume. We will need to address the steel sector to cover 1,000 sites. So that's we need volume of data. And also for performance, we need good enough performance. We don't need the highest performance, but still, let's say, a detection threshold of about what we call 5 million ton per year of CO2 today. We need to go down to some 100 kilotons of hundreds kilotons of CO2 per year. So we need to improve indeed performance. So that's why a satellite, and why a small satellite, because we are really driven by the time to market from the regulation, 2027, so really driven. We know we'll have to grow eventually to a small constellation, but still, let's say, a few units to eventually target all the initial sectors, so somewhat like 15,000 sites, which we will have to cover eventually. And we will fund that partly from equity, so we will really look at the lowest cost. So that's why we need a satellite, and that's why we are looking for small satellites.
Okay, another example of the complementarity, again, and a bit a niche, and an example which is quite interesting because you are at the same time an enabler of potential legislation, because one of the issues with greenhouse gas monitoring is to monitor this anthropic emission indeed. Okay, coming back to Pierre-Alain, you are active on the worldwide market and not just the European one. But with this worldwide perspective, what is specific to the European market? And from your point of view as a new service provider, what is the opportunity and threats in this market?
So thank you, Dominique. Currently, we consider that 70% of our market is institutional. The reality is that the commercial market is growing, and the institutional market is growing more rapidly.
Even more.
Even more. So it means that in fact, and we see it, the downstream, EU downstream, either providing imagery or insights, is really, there is a strong dynamic moving forward. So coming back to European market, I will start with a threat. For those who didn't notice it, the world has changed. So I will talk about geopolitical, of course, but clearly, we could see, we could imagine as a threat that due to this change, there is a strong will for sovereignty reason to internalize what was at the beginning externalized. So we could imagine that institutions, nations, they want to buy their own satellite, to operate them, to develop their own analytics, and to provide their own insights. So that will be a major threat for all of us. That could happen. Opportunities, the world has changed.
As well.
Always. And in fact, usually satellite imagery was used by for strategic purposes in defense or for a scientific purpose. And we have seen that today, for law enforcement, I'm just citing law enforcement, but also the experience we have from the Ukraine war, images, insights, they are used at tactical level. And that is something which is a major change. So, and there is a real opportunity here because it will mean much more use of data, much more needs. So for us, it will be a real opportunities. And European Commission with this Earth Observation Governmental Service and ESA with its European Resilience from Space, which I understand is an EOGS accelerator, but you will tell us that the 3rd of July. Yes. I think it is really an opportunity if institutions, so European Commission and ESA, you are able to find with us, so with the downstream services, the European operators, and either from small constellation or from large satellite, if we are able to find the right balance, then it could be a real opportunity. That's all.
Strengthening European champion and at the same time delivering these upgraded services for much lower latency.
Yes, so you said it. I fully agree.
Okay. we will talk the 3rd of July, I'm sure. Okay. Milena, you mentioned new application made possible with this wealth of data, a bit more forecast, integrating digital solutions with the data. It's clear that when we are talking about constellation, we see the huge increase of data volume from as a downstream operator that goes with cost. So what are the technical challenges with this huge amount of data and how you manage those challenges?
Thank you, Dominique. I think this is the challenge. It's not only to process these high volumes of data, but also to deliver on quality, on time, on cost. This is a very Airbus sentence, but it's very important to say that we need to be closer again to the users. How we do that, and Pierre-Alain just mentioned that these data, this information are more and more tactical. So they are used for strategic decision makers in particular events in some cases. So we need to be, let's say, on the challenges to reduce the time between processing and delivery. And how we do that, for sure, there is a change in the competencies because we talk about data, we talk less about people. So meaning that also the skin of the companies are changing. We are moving to delivering just data, to deliver a service that is end-to-end. So you need also to have a complete new set of skills and to build them because they're not existing. If they're existing, we say it's in the house of the competitors. But normally also the competitors, call us and they say, do you know where we can find them? Because so we have to build also this. It's again, a social impact. So we are changing also let's say, the society in that sense. We are creating new competencies and new jobs. For sure, we are using AI modeling, because this is clear, and it's also in the way we are using them and how fast it is, because most of these topics are, let's say, so common now, so mainstream that everybody is talking about them, but I don't know how many are able then to really describe them and to say, okay, what we need to do, when, and why. So we are also on the core on that. We are trying to use this modeling skills of people, and for sure, as part of Leonardo, I mean, we have the privilege to have access to one of the biggest and most important infrastructure, that is the high-performance computing. So it's a very powerful machine in the evolving, clearly, because what is the change? Is that we need space-based HPC. You need to be closer, meaning you have to onboard these capabilities. So it's not enough anymore to have it on Earth. You need to be closer to deliver this information. And again, come back to the people, because for me it's very important to say that you need on Earth, or whatever, when we'll be on the Moon or Mars or where we send them, is to have experts that are able to register this data, understand them, and deliver this information. And this we can do by AI, but I think that a human being still, it's having its value.
At least we need the skill. But that's a very good point that we can see in this symposium many examples of tools that are developed to generate this information, but how you turn that into a reliable services that enable decisions that will impact life of people. That's really the industrial challenge now. Okay, Martin, Aurora Tech has been extremely successful in raising quite lots of money to build your capacities, and you were successful in getting support from European institutions in particular. What was the most helpful from the mechanism you received? You don't have to answer either. And do you have any advice to improve further the mechanisms?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say both, but for different reasons. So when you look at VC, the VC money we got helped us to implement the speed, to implement the speed and deployment of the constellation, to get the 10 satellites in orbit in time, and to grow. But most important, it helps you to keep the checks and balances on your business model. So VC, for me, is a perfect feedback giver to if you're doing it right or wrong on the market. Those VC funds, they come mostly from outside space, which I consider is very healthy. So they give you a very good checks and balances on if you're doing it right or wrong, but not in our space bubble, which is very good. Now, if you look at institutional money, and most money for us is with ESA. So we have contracts with ESA, and historically we have grown through Incubed and GSDP, and now are working in the realms of the Greek national program. That's also important, but for another reason. So it's important to have checks and balances on the tech. So for us as a young company, obviously, we think we know it all, but we don't. It's so important to have experts at ESA, both in STEC and ESTRIN, Mission Performance Cluster. So to have those experts helping you with their mistakes they already did, because we don't want to make that mistakes again, because the time for us is limited. Both is not easy. Both worlds are complementary, but also sometimes disagreeing.
Yeah.
And it's also not easy because you get honest feedback, and that's sometimes hard. But it's so important to have it, to have that checks and balances for all of us. Because if we're not doing it, we're just staying inside our bubble and explaining ourselves how great we are and how great the world could be, if only. And looking into the future, I see, if we grow further in Europe, we need even more brave people on the VC side. So historically, there has been a bit of thin air when we're at our stage, so post-Series B. So we need more encouragement on that side. But most important, we shall not fear to risk things, because in Europe we have this mentality of fearing to take a decision. I think the worst case is to not do anything, just sit there and wait.
Yes. So thanks for the kind word on ESA. That's why you were invited. But I really think that this relationship transforms us, ESA, as well, by learning different ways to do things and by learning that risk can be very, very valuable when they are well taken. So thanks for that as well. So coming back to SI, you mentioned many different use cases with the first responder. And so that means you have discussed with them, you have military users, you have civil crisis management users. What have you learned from all these discussions, and how what you learn in turn make you decide to adapt your space solutions, so your constellation?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've met with a few customers recently across Europe, and what I find really fascinating is when they share like really key information with you. So one lady I met in Europe is responsible for actually hitting the button when a natural catastrophe is about to occur. And she told me if she gets it wrong, she has just wasted 200,000 euro, okay? Spinning people up, maybe getting them out in the middle of the night, getting machinery ready, whatever it is they're doing. So she wanted to make sure that if she was gonna hit that button, she needed to hit the button. So accuracy, being able to do it in a timely way, these are all like really key things, but also being able to push that information down to the other emergency services so that they could see if there was, let's say, a flood event, they could see like the ingress, egress routes, they could pre-plan what they were gonna do. And that was a very important part. So the actual accuracy of the information we were giving was really critical for her. And in what we provide, we can start painting an area if we see something that we think might turn into a weather event, let's say, 96 hours ahead of time. And then we have the before picture. Then what we can do is during the event, maybe every 6 to 8 hours, depending on conditions, we can give a really accurate assessment of the extent of a flood, let's say. And then what we can do on a 24-hourly basis is provide a really detailed report with the most key information, which is depth of flood.
Yeah.
And in that depth of flood service we can provide, we're using SAR, but we use other data as well, a little bit of optical, SNS data, river gauge data, DEM data. It's like a big burrito of, sorry, I missed breakfast this morning, so I'm thinking a little bit of food, but it's like a burrito of information that comes to the customer. And then they can use it in exactly the way they need to use it. So it's the practical examples of being able to understand what the challenges are of the Category 1 responders, and then how we fit in to, and this is the key bit, how we fit into their, or possibly your, workflows. So if we can't provide something that's usable and fits within their systems, then we're wasting everybody's time. And that's what we don't want to do. So, you know, that's all relevant for us.
Thank you. That's I think very interesting feedback on this dialogue and how we learn from this first transponder and the specificity of their needs. And of course, we will have very soon further discussion with industry on this European resilience from space, which is targeting precisely these elements. And all your feedback shows that we might have quite different approach from the more scientific or strategic information gathering that we have. Let's close with Hervé. So the brand new startup. We we know that the Earth observation market is a worldwide market, and there are many initiatives coming from US and China, but you decided to create your startup in Europe. You decided to try to develop it in Europe. Question is why? You are not stupid. There should be a reason. Why trying in Europe very hard to develop this service?
Thank you for recognizing I'm not so stupid.
Even not at all, I believe. But okay.
No. But that's a very key question. And the first answer is regulation. Europe is very good at regulation, but climate-based regulation makes CO2 become now a real accountable value for the economy. And that makes a difference. The emission trading scheme has been in place since 2005. And now the carbon border adjustment mechanism enters into force. That's taxing the CO2 content of imported products. And the aim of that being to basically to support the competitiveness of the European industry. So industry in our countries, it's a matter of sovereignty, somewhat. So there is a strong, deep societal impact to that, and there is a deep economical impact. So the emission trading scheme is worth already 35 billion euros for industry in Europe. CBAM will be worth up to 10 billion euros. Well, we are really talking a lot of money. So there will be at stake the method and the application, the implementation of those regulations to ensure that they are applied in a just and full manner with no circumvention. And so that's precisely, let's say, that totally fits with our ambition, which is to provide, to become the reference for industrial CO2 emissions, to provide this reference of industrial CO2 emissions worldwide, wherever, be it in Europe, outside of Europe, and allowing the implementation, application of this regulation fully and justly. Then Europe is where we start with commercial traction, be it with finance, with industry. We see a lot of, let's say, very specific use case. We're not, let's say, going anywhere. Very specific use case on indeed those ones who would benefit from now on to get those, let's say, validated, precise industrial CO2 data. And last but not least, in Europe, we have a lot of very good partners, be it for the satellite itself, for the instruments, the satellite as a service, research. We are, let's say, fully relying on collaboration with the research labs, and because we need to be at the state of the art of CO2 measurement to break the wall. So that's the reason why, and expecting a lot of, having already a lot of support. So taking this opportunity to thank CNES and ESA. Thank you for your support already. That's so precious for a very young company. So that's really key for us. And let's say we know we can count on further support, particularly building public-private partnership. That will be key for us to get to the satellite stage. We will raise equity, but indeed, let's say this public-private will be necessary for us to really get quickly to our target. And last but not least, will be, let's say, having the, hopefully, if we do a good job, having the European Commission making use of our data, which will make it indeed the reference and the standard, hopefully.
Just make Europe better.
Exactly.
But I believe that's a great example of how Europe can be an extremely interesting opportunities for this specific type of services, and the proximity of the various stakeholders from, like we were talking about civil responders, all the forum that we have created around Earth observation is creating in Europe lots of opportunities to develop. Thanks a lot for your testimony. I hope it was useful for you as well, and you get some information. Thanks.